The air in the subway tunnel tasted like dust and desperation, but the cold metal of the turnstile felt like salvation. My lungs burned, and the rhythmic pounding in my ears wasn't the train. It was the frantic rhythm of my own flight. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's go back to hours before, where it all started. I vaulted through the turnstile without swiping, my portfolio bag slamming against my hip hard enough to bruise. Behind me, Albertino's voice cut through the evening crowd like a blade, sharp and possessive and wrong. "Elvia, don't you dare walk away from me." But I was already running. The platform opened before me in a blur of fluorescent lights and tired faces. My heels clicked against the grimy tile, each step in prayer that the next train would arrive before he caught up. The electronic board overhead flickered. 2 minutes. 2 minutes felt like an eternity when you could still hear your ex-boyfriend's footsteps echoing down the stairs behind you, when your wrists still throbbed from where his fingers had dug in hard enough to leave marks. The rumble started deep in the tunnel, a promise of escape. I pushed through the clustering commuters, mumbling apologies I didn't mean, focused only on getting closer to the yellow safety line. The headlights appeared in the darkness like twin moons, and relief flooded through me so powerfully my knees nearly buckled. The train screeched into the station. Doors hissed open. I lunged forward just as a hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I said stop. I twisted violently, breaking Albertino's grip, and threw myself through the closing doors. My bag caught on something, someone, and I stumbled forward with enough momentum that I couldn't stop. My body collided with something solid and immovable, and strong hands caught me by the upper arms before I could fall. The door sealed shut behind me with a pneumatic finality. The train lurched into motion, and I found myself staring at a wall of expensive charcoal fabric. Slowly, I tilted my head back, following the lines of a perfectly tailored suit jacket up to a throat, a jaw, a mouth set in a line that suggested both amusement and something far more dangerous. Then I met his eyes. They were dark, almost black in the harsh subway lighting, and they looked at me with the kind of focused intensity that made my breath catch for an entirely different reason than my panic sprint. This wasn't the look of a helpful stranger who had kept me from falling. This was assessment, calculation, interest, the kind of interest that felt like standing too close to a fire. "Steady," he said, and his voice was low, controlled, with an accent that turned the simple word into something that sounded almost like a command. He hadn't let go of my arms. His grip was firm, but not painful, nothing like Albertino's desperate clutching, and yet I felt more trapped in this moment than I had in the entire 6 months of trying to extricate myself from that relationship. The train plunged deeper into the tunnel, the lights flickering once before steadying, and I realized with creeping dread that I was now confined in this rattling metal box with a man who looked like he could break me in half without breaking a sweat. His suit probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. His presence commanded the space around him in a way that made other passengers unconsciously step back, creating a small bubble of empty air in the crowded car. There was something about the set of his shoulders, the way he held himself, that whispered of violence kept on a very tight leash. I had run from one dangerous man straight into the path of another. And this one, I suspected with a cold certainty settling in my stomach, was far more dangerous than Albertino could ever dream of being. The train began to slow between stations, that peculiar deceleration that meant delays. My heart sank. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, and the car settled into an uneasy crawl through the tunnel darkness. The man still hadn't released me. "You can let go now," I said, hating the tremor in my voice. One dark eyebrow rose. "Can I?" His grip shifted, becoming less about steadying and more about holding. "You're still shaking." "I'm fine." "You're lying." He said it without judgment, the way someone might comment on the weather. Then his gaze dropped, traveling deliberately down to where his fingers circled my arms. His thumb moved, pressing against the inside of my left wrist. I flinched before I could stop myself. The bruise that was only hours old, 5 distinct marks in shades of purple and yellow where Albertino had grabbed me. His eyes narrowed as he turned my wrist slowly, examining the damage with unsettling focus. "Recent," he said softly, and there was nothing soft about the word. "It's nothing." I tried to pull away. His grip tightened just enough to keep me in place, not painful, but absolutely immovable. "It's something." His eyes lifted back to mine, dark and calculating. The man on the platform? My silence answered for me. The train crawled forward. Around us, passengers looked away with practiced urban indifference. We existed in a bubble of tension, invisible and utterly exposed. "Let me guess," he continued, voice dropping lower. "Ex-boyfriend who doesn't understand now. Thinks you belong to him." Each word landed with weight. "Am I close?" "That's none of your business. You made it my business when you crashed into me running from him." He tilted his head, studying me with an intensity that felt invasive. "What's your name?" I pressed my lips together, defiant despite my racing pulse. Around us, the train groaned through the tunnel. His thumb found my pulse point again, resting there deliberately. "Afraid?" "Smart." That almost smile returned. "But what interests me more is this." He gestured vaguely in my face. That look, half terror, half fury. Most people show me one or the other. Never both. Maybe you should let go and find out which half wins. His smile widened, transforming his face into something lethal. "Elvia Marino," he said, reading my name off the portfolio bag still hanging from my shoulder. "Designer. Running from a man who marked you." His grip finally loosened, but he didn't step back. "My name is Ruggero Lucchesi, and I think we need to have a conversation." The train lurched forward, accelerating toward the next station. The name hung between us like smoke. Lucchesi. Everyone in the city knew that name, even if they pretended not to. My mouth went dry as the implications crashed over me. The expensive suit, the commanding presence, the way other passengers instinctively avoided him. This wasn't just another dangerous man. This was the most dangerous man in the city, and I'd literally thrown myself into his arms. The train pulled into the station with a hydraulic hiss, but neither of us moved toward the doors. Ruggero stood between me and escape, solid and immovable, waiting for something I wasn't sure I could give him. "A conversation," I repeated, my voice steadier than I felt. "About what exactly?" "About why a talented designer is running through subway stations like a hunted animal." He gestured toward the bruise on my wrist. "About that. About what you're running from, and more importantly, what you're running toward." The door slid shut. The train began moving again. I'd missed my chance to escape. "His name is Albertino Conti," I heard myself say, the words tumbling out in a nervous rush. "We dated for 6 months. I broke it off 3 weeks ago when he started getting possessive, controlling. He wouldn't accept it. He shows up at my apartment, my studio, anywhere he thinks I might be." I swallowed hard. Tonight, he cornered me outside my friend's place. Said if I wouldn't come back to him willingly, he'd make sure I had no choice. That he'd ruin me, destroy my reputation, contact all my clients, and tell them I'm unstable. Ruggero's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "I need to disappear," I continued, hating how desperate I sounded. "Start over somewhere else. But I need money for that. My studio is barely breaking even, and every cent I save, I have to put back into materials, equipment. I can't just leave without funds, without some kind of security, but I can't stay either because he won't stop." Albertino Conti. Ruggero said the name like he was tasting something unpleasant. Banker's son, works in his father's firm, drives a Mercedes he didn't earn, and wears suits that cost more than he's worth. He paused. Weak man playing at power. I blinked. "You know him?" "I know of him. Everyone in certain circles knows everyone else." His gaze sharpened. "He's nothing, Elvia. A spoiled child having a tantrum because his favorite toy walked away. He doesn't feel like nothing when he's standing outside my door at 2 in the morning." "No, I imagine he doesn't." Ruggero took a step closer, and I retreated until my back hit the subway door. He placed one hand on the window beside my head, leaning in. "Here's what I find interesting. You're not crying. You're not begging me to help you. or we're trying to play on my sympathy. You're furious and frightened in equal measure, and you're telling me your problems like you're reciting a business proposal. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to understand something. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, intimate and terrifying. You ran from Albertino Conti tonight. A weak man who thinks bruising a woman's wrist makes him powerful. But you ran straight into my arms, Elvia Marino. Into the car of someone who actually is powerful. Someone who could make Albertino Conti disappear with a single phone call. My breath caught. Running from one man, he continued, his dark eyes locked on mine, right into the car of another. Do you believe in fate? No, neither do I. But I believe in opportunity. And I believe in taking what I want when it falls into my hands. His free hand came up, fingers brushing the side of my face with surprising gentleness. You're going to be mine, Elvia Marino. The words hung in the air between us, a promise and a threat wrapped into one. That's not a conversation, I whispered. That's a declaration. His smile was slow and absolutely predatory. Yes, it is. The train screeched into the next station, and the spell between us shattered. Doors opened with a pneumatic gasp, and the evening crowd surged forward, a wall of bodies pushing between us. I stumbled back, using the chaos as cover to put distance between myself and Ruggero Lucchesi. Elvia, his voice cut through the noise. I kept moving toward the platform, my portfolio bag clutched against my chest like a shield. But then his hand caught mine, not grabbing, just holding, and he pressed something small and rigid into my palm before the crowd swept me away completely. By the time I reached the platform and turned back, he was gone, vanished into the mass of commuters, as if he'd never existed at all. I looked down at what he'd given me. A business card, heavy stock, expensive, black with silver lettering. No company name, no title. Just a phone number and 2 words, Ruggero Lucchesi. My hands were still shaking when I reached the street level. The coffee shop 3 blocks from the station had terrible espresso and decent Wi-Fi. I ordered something I didn't intend to drink and claimed a corner table, my laptop already open before I sat down. The card sat on the scarred surface beside my keyboard, those silver letters catching the overhead light. I typed his name into the search bar. The results loaded, and my stomach dropped. The first page was all news articles. Financial acquisitions, charity galas, business partnerships with names I recognized from billboards and magazine covers. Ruggero Lucchesi photographed in $1,000 suits, shaking hands with politicians and CEOs. The legitimate face of the Lucchesi empire. But I wasn't stupid. I kept scrolling. The second page showed the cracks in the facade. Opinion pieces from journalists asking questions they couldn't quite answer. Investigations that went nowhere. Associates who disappeared or turned up dead under mysterious circumstances. The Lucchesi organization, the articles hinted carefully, had interests that extended far beyond legitimate business ventures. I switched to a different search. Lucchesi crime family. There it was. Reddit threads, anonymous forums, true crime blogs. People who spoke in careful language about things everyone knew but no one could prove. The Lucchesi organization controlled half the city's port traffic. They owned judges, politicians, police captains. Legitimate businesses served as fronts for money laundering, drug trafficking, weapons deals. And at the center of it all was Ruggero Lucchesi, who'd inherited the empire from his father 5 years ago and expanded it with ruthless efficiency. Brutal but fair. One post read, "Cross him and you disappear. Stay loyal and you're protected for life." Another, "He doesn't make threats. He makes promises." A third, from someone claiming to be a former associate, "Lucchesi doesn't lose control. Ever. I watch him shoot a man in the head and then sit down to finish his dinner without washing his hands first." I closed the laptop, my coffee untouched and cold. The man on the train. The man who'd held my wrist with surprising gentleness while examining Albertino's bruises. The man who'd looked at me like I was something he'd decided to keep. "You're going to be mine, Elvia Marino." Not a question, not a request. A statement of fact delivered with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never been denied anything he wanted. I picked up the card, turning it over in my fingers. The back was blank except for a single line of text I hadn't noticed before, handwritten in precise script. When you're ready to stop running. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Get home safely, Elvia. I looked up sharply, scanning the coffee shop windows, the street beyond. But there was no one there. No expensive suits, no predatory smiles. Just the usual flow of evening traffic and tired pedestrians. He was watching me. Of course he was. I gathered my things with trembling hands and stepped out into the night, the card burning a hole in my pocket and a Mafia Boss's phone number memorized against my will. 3 days later, I called him. 3 days of jumping at shadows, of checking over my shoulder every 5 minutes, of finding Albertino's car parked outside my building at midnight. 3 days of not sleeping, of living on coffee and fear, of watching my savings account dwindle as I priced out plane tickets to cities where I knew no one and had no prospects. 3 days of staring at that business card and remembering the way Ruggero Lucchesi had looked at me, like I was already his. I was beginning to think you'd keep running, he said when he answered. No greeting, no pretense of surprise. I'm tired of running. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Then stop. A pause. I'll send a car. 1 hour. The line went dead before I could respond. The car was a black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark they seemed to absorb light. The driver didn't speak, didn't look at me, just held the door open and waited. I climbed in because I'd already made my choice when I dialed that number. We drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind for sprawling estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. The Lucchesi property announced itself with understated menace. 12-foot walls, security cameras tracking our approach, guards in expensive suits who nodded the car through without question. The house beyond was a study in controlled opulence. Modern lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, marble and steel and money. Not ostentatious, but impossible to miss the wealth behind every careful choice. Ruggero waited in a study that overlooked manicured gardens lit by subtle ground lighting. He traded the subway suit for something more casual, but no less expensive, and he looked perfectly at ease in his own kingdom. Elvia. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Sit. I remained standing. You said I should stop running. I'm here. So tell me what you want. His mouth curved with what might have been approval. Direct. Good. I dislike wasting time. He moved around the desk, leaning against it, arms crossed. Here's what I'm offering. You become mine, publicly and permanently. You move into this house. You accompany me to events, dinners, meetings where I need a partner on my side. You play the role of the woman who belongs to Ruggero Lucchesi. In exchange for what? Total protection. Albertino Conti becomes a problem that no longer exists. Not dead. He added, reading something my expression. Just convinced that pursuing you would be catastrophically bad for his health and his family's business interests. My throat felt tight. And full funding for your design studio. New equipment, better space, whatever you need to build the business you actually want instead of the one you can barely afford. You'll have complete creative control. I don't interfere with your work. You're buying me. I'm investing in you. He pushed off the desk, closing the distance between us. There's a difference. You get security, independence, the ability to create without fear. I get you. Your presence, your time, your public loyalty. And my private loyalty? Something flickered in his dark eyes. That, Elvia, you'll give me eventually. But I'm patient. This is insane. This is practical. He reached out, fingers ghosting along my jaw. You need power you don't have. I have power I'm willing to share. You need protection from a man who won't stop. I can make him stop with a conversation. You need money. I have money that means nothing to me, but everything to you. His thumb brushed my lower lip. And I want you. Not as a transaction. Not as a possession. As mine. There's a difference. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But the larger part, the exhausted, desperate part that had been fighting alone for too long, whispered that this was the only way out. How long? I asked quietly. As long as it takes. For what? His smile was slow and sure. For you to stop asking that question. I left the estate with his proposal ringing in my ears and 48 hours to decide. Sophia met me at her apartment the next morning, took one look at my face, and poured us both wine despite the early hour. She'd been my friend since design school, the only person who knew the full extent of Albertino's obsession and hadn't told me I was overreacting. "Tell me," she said simply. So I did. All of it. The train, the research, the proposal. When I finished, Sophia was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in her glass. "Elvia, you're talking about becoming the girlfriend of a mafia boss. I'm talking about survival." "Are you?" She set down her glass. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're trading one controlling man for another. At least Albertino doesn't run a criminal empire. Albertino shows up at my door at 2 in the morning. He follows me to client meetings. Yesterday, he sent flowers to the studio with a note that said, 'You'll come back eventually.'" My voice cracked. "He's never going to stop, Sophia. I can file restraining orders until I'm blue in the face, and he'll ignore them because his father knows every judge in the city. I can move, and he'll find me. I can run, and he'll follow." "So you run to someone more dangerous?" "I run to someone powerful enough to make it stop." I met her eyes. "Ruggiero isn't asking me to love him. He's not pretending this is romance. It's a transaction. I give him my time and public presence. He gives me safety and the means to build my career. It's honest. Honest." Sophia laughed without humor. "Elvia, men like Ruggiero Lucchesi don't do anything without expecting everything in return. What happens when the transaction isn't enough? Well, he wants more than your time." I thought about that. Spent the entire sleepless night thinking about it. "Then I'll decide then. But right now, today, I'm out of options. My lease is up in 2 months. I can barely afford to renew it, and I can't work because I'm too busy looking over my shoulder. This studio, this career I've built, it's dying because of Albertino, and no restraining order, no police report, no amount of running is going to change that." Sophia reached across the table, gripping my hand. "I just don't want you to trade one cage for another. At least this cage has funding and security." I squeezed back, and maybe, eventually, a door I can walk through. With Albertino, there's no door. Just walls closing in until there's nothing left of me. She studied my face for a long moment, then sighed. "You've already decided, haven't you?" "Yes." "Then promise me something. Promise me you'll stay you. Don't let him reshape you into whatever he thinks he wants." "I promise." I wasn't sure if I believed it, but saying the words felt necessary. That night, I pulled out Ruggiero's card one final time. My hands didn't shake as I dialed. He answered on the second ring. "Elvia, I accept," I said before I could second-guess myself. "Your proposal. Your terms. I accept." A pause, heavy with meaning. "Be ready tomorrow at noon. Bring what matters. Everything else will be provided." "Ruggiero." I swallowed hard. "If you break your word, if you lie about any of this." "I don't lie, Elvia. I don't need to." His voice was quiet, certain. "Welcome home." The line went dead. I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by years of careful survival, and wondered if I just made the best decision of my life or signed away everything I was. Tomorrow I'd find out. Tomorrow came and changed everything. The first week was disorienting. Ruggiero's house became my house, though it took weeks before I stopped calling it his. My belongings looked small and insignificant in rooms designed for people who'd never worried about rent. But he meant what he said about my studio. The third floor had been converted into a workspace that made my old cramped corner look like a closet. Industrial sewing machines, a cutting table twice the size of my old one, fabric storage organized with military precision, lighting that actual professional photographers would envy. I had my people research what designers need, Ruggiero said when he showed it to me. "If something's missing, tell me." I'd stood in the center of that beautiful space and felt something crack open in my chest. By the second month, I'd stopped jumping every time he entered a room. Ruggiero kept his distance, surprisingly respectful of the boundaries I hadn't needed to voice. He worked long hours, took calls in Italian that I didn't ask about, disappeared from meetings that ended late. But when he was home, he was present. He'd appear in my studio doorway with coffee, made exactly how I liked it. He'd ask about my projects with genuine interest, remembering details from conversations days earlier. "You're working on the Morrison wedding dress," he said one evening, watching me pin fabric. "The one with the cathedral train. You remember that? I remember everything you tell me. You said like it was obvious. The dinner parties started in month 3. I played my role, standing beside him in dresses he'd had delivered without asking my size, but somehow getting it perfect. His hand would rest on the small of my back, possessive but not controlling. He'd introduce me as Elvia, my partner, with a tone that made it clear what happened to anyone who looked at me wrong. I watched him navigate rooms full of dangerous men with effortless authority and understood why people feared him. But I also saw the way he'd catch my eye across a crowded room, checking if I was comfortable. The way he'd end conversations abruptly if someone said something that made my smile tighten. Albertino disappeared like smoke. I never asked what Ruggiero did, and he never volunteered the information. But my ex's car stopped appearing outside buildings I frequented. The threatening messages stopped. Sophia told me she'd heard through mutual friends that Albertino had accepted a position at his father's London office and moved within a week. Guess he finally got the message, she'd said carefully. I knew better. The message hadn't come from me. By month 4, the lines had blurred so thoroughly I couldn't find him anymore. Ruggiero would work in my studio sometimes, his laptop set up at the small table by the window, just existing in my space without demanding my attention. I'd started cooking dinner on nights when his meetings ended early, and we'd eat together, talking about everything and nothing. One night, he found me on the terrace at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep, sketching by moonlight. "Can't shut your brain off?" he asked, settling into the chair beside me. "Too many ideas." I didn't look up from my paper. "It happens sometimes." "Show me." So I did. And he listened, asked questions that proved he understood what I was trying to create. When I finally looked at him, something in his expression made my breath catch. "What?" I asked. "You're not afraid of me anymore." I realized he was right. Somewhere between the coffee deliveries and the quiet evenings and the absolute security he'd wrapped around my life, fear had transformed into something else entirely. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. "Should I be?" I asked quietly. His smile was soft in the darkness. "Not of me, Elvia. Never of me." And for the first time since that night on the train, I believed him completely. The illusion of safety shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my studio, lost in the details of a commission, when Ruggiero appeared in the doorway. Not his usual controlled entrance, but sudden, tense, with 2 of his men flanking him. The expression on his face made my stomach drop. "Pack a bag. Now. 5 minutes." "What's happening?" "Elvia." His voice was sharp, urgent in a way I'd never heard. "Do not argue with me. Pack. Now." I learned to read his moods over the past months. This wasn't anger. This was fear, barely leashed, and that terrified me more than anything else could have. My hand shook as I threw clothes into a bag. Ruggiero stood in the doorway of my bedroom, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. I caught fragments, names I didn't recognize, locations, the word immediately, repeated like a prayer. "Ruggiero, please, tell me what's happening." He ended the call, crossed the room, and gripped my shoulders. "The Castellano organization is moving against me. They've been planning this for months, and I didn't see it coming fast enough." His jaw tightened. "They know about you." My blood went cold. "Ow!" Something dangerous flickered across his face. "Albertino, your ex-boyfriend surfaced in London 2 weeks ago, drowning in gambling debts. The Castellanos have connections there. He sold them everything he knew about you. Your routines, your studio location, where you go when you leave the estate. Albertino, even exiled and ruined, he found a way to hurt me. I thought you took care of him," I whispered. "I moved him. I didn't eliminate him because you're not the kind of woman who wants blood on her hands." His grip tightened. "That mercy might have cost you your life." "Ruggiero, listen to me." He pulled me closer, his forehead nearly touching mine. "Marco is taking you to a safe house in the mountains. No one knows about it except my most trusted people. You don't leave, you don't contact anyone, you don't even look out a window until I personally come get you. Do you understand?" "How long?" "I don't know. Days, maybe weeks." Something raw crossed his face, quickly suppressed. "The Castellanos want to hurt me, and they've decided the best way to do that is through you. I won't let that happen. Come with me." "I can't. If I run, they win. I have to end this here. He cupped my face with both hands, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. I made you a promise, Elvia. Total protection. That's what this is. Tears burned behind my eyes. What if something happens to you? It won't. But his voice carried a weight that suggested he couldn't guarantee that. Trust me. One more time. Trust me to keep you safe. I do trust you. Something softened in his expression, just for a moment. Then he kissed me, hard and desperate, and nothing like the careful distance we'd maintained for months. We pulled back. His thumb traced my lower lip. Go. Now. Marco appeared in the doorway, and I let him guide me toward the stairs. I looked back once. Ruggiero stood in my bedroom, surrounded by his men, looking every inch the dangerous man I'd first met on that train. But now I could see what I'd missed then, what 4 months had taught me to recognize. He was terrified of losing me. The safe house was a cabin buried in mountains I didn't recognize, surrounded by armed guards who treated me with careful respect. Days blurred into each other. No phone, no internet, no contact with the outside world. Just waiting and wondering if the man who'd promised to protect me was still alive to keep that promise. On the 5th day, I heard vehicles approaching and my heart stopped. Then Ruggiero walked through the door, and I could breathe again. He looked exhausted, his suit rumpled in a way I'd never seen, a cut healing on his cheekbone. But he was alive, whole, and a relief that crashed through me was so powerful my knees buckled. He caught me before I hit the floor, pulling me against his chest with bruising intensity. It's over, he said into my hair. The Castellanos are finished. You're safe. I pulled back just enough to see his face. And Albertino will never trouble you again. The way he said it left no room for questions, and I didn't ask any. Some things I'd learned were better left unexamined. Take me home, I whispered. His arms tightened around me. Always. The ride back felt different. I sat pressed against his side, his hand never leaving mine, and something fundamental had shifted between us. The arrangement we'd so carefully maintained had burned away in those 5 days of separation, leaving something raw and real in its place. That night, he asked me to marry him, not as part of the arrangement, not for appearances or protection or any of the practical reasons that had brought us together. Just because somewhere between the subway tunnel and the safe house, between coffee deliveries and midnight conversations, we'd become something neither of us had planned for. I said yes before he finished asking. 6 months later, I stood in my studio and barely recognized the woman I'd been a year ago. The space had expanded into the building next door, a proper atelier now, with 3 assistants and a waiting list that stretched into next year. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating bolts of silk and lace arranged like an artist's palette. My autumn collection hung on dress forms along the far wall, each piece a small triumph of creativity finally given room to flourish. Mrs. Lucchesi, my assistant Maria, appeared in the doorway. Your 3 o'clock is here for a final fitting. Mrs. Lucchesi. The name still felt new, like wearing shoes that hadn't quite molded to my feet yet. But I was learning to love it. Send her up, I said, turning back to adjust the hem on a wedding gown that had taken me 3 weeks to perfect. My phone buzzed. A text from Ruggiero. Dinner meeting running late. Don't wait up. I love you. I smiled, typing back. Studio's busy anyway. Love you too. Simple words. Ordinary. The kind of mundane exchange that would have seemed impossible that night on the train, when I crashed into a dangerous stranger and felt my entire world tilt sideways. I'd been running from a man who wanted to cage me, and I'd run straight into the arms of a man who'd given me wings instead. The irony wasn't lost on me. Neither was the gift. Through the window, I could see the city stretching out below, the same streets I'd fled through in desperation, now transformed into something that looked almost like possibility. Somewhere out there was the subway platform where this had all begun, where fear and chance had collided into something I'd never expected. Freedom, it turned out, had sharp edges and wore expensive suits. It spoke in low voices and kept promises with absolute certainty. It had found me when I was running and taught me that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the only real one. I was Elvia Lucchesi now, designer, Wife, woman who traded one life for another and discovered that the exchange had given her everything she'd been too afraid to want. The chaos had led me exactly where I needed to be, and I'd stopped running entirely.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.